Greetings, nerds. This is CNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening?
I'm alive.
Yeah.
This is my fault, everyone. My fault. I had to play my sick excuse, and yesterday couldn't happen. So we're talking today. But silver lining, we got a lot of news to talk about today because we had to postpone. So everything works out, everybody.
Yeah, it does have a strange way of working out. Hate it that it had to be that way, but yeah, we definitely got more things to talk about then, and we already had so much to talk about. I mean, damn, last week, really.
I think there was just one headline, though, that everybody was obsessed with talking about because it kind of is like a punch in the gut. And funny thing, I had a power outage yesterday, so because I had already downloaded Endgame, I was watching the second hour because for some reason, when it first got released, I only watched the first hour and then I stopped and I never returned.
Who can play? Well, it's easy to do. I mean, that's a three and a half hour long movie, so
Literally, it's been months.
Still, yeah, but you can be forgiven. You can be forgiven.
And for those of you who want to know exactly where I was, it was right before they went back in time. Like that was the cutting off point.
That's actually a good stopping place.
It's all downhill from there, right? I don't know. Maybe it's because like that's the part that feels the most like Infinity War, so I gravitate to a lot of stuff that goes on in that part.
Yeah.
But it was I had to kill some time, and I'm like, well, I can always resume Endgame. I still haven't finished it.
That's okay. I finally, speaking of like getting around to things, I finally rewatched Spider-Verse last week. I think it was all the news of Spider-Man and Sony and Marvel and all that stuff. So I was like, I just need to like get some reassurance that things are going to be okay. So I watched Spider-Verse.
Yeah, you told me about that. And I mean, speaking about things that I think we all just need to take a step back. First of all, we're spoiled brats. We really are. It was a long shot that this deal was ever going to happen. Nobody believed it when it did happen. Mm-hmm. And then there was like, oh my God, we have two different movie corporations working together to bring us exactly what we want, and they're going to make this work. And it was successful. Yeah. And you know what happens when we have success? You know what happens, Will?
We get greedy.
Thank you. Okay, because we want more. We always want more, and we want more. And I don't exactly recall, but isn't it Disney who wants more? Am I correct, or is it Sony?
So so Sony was unwilling to share in the profits in exchange for several things. I think one of the main things was I saw earlier last week was that there was the producer credit for Kevin Feige, but it basically did boil down to money.
Yeah, it's always going to be money, which is, it's kind of annoying considering how much money these movies make. And boo-hoo, you have to share.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it was just like really. But in the dueling press releases and the dueling stories, and is it on again, off again, and it seems like Sony basically said, "Well, Disney took their ball and went home," and so here we are. But
because Disney, I mean, yeah, they lose a character, but Sony is now sitting on an incomplete product because it's supposed to be a trilogy. It is supposed to have its conclusion that. Looking back at Far From Home and how it ended, it's like, really? Wait, we're not going to have Feige in the background cleaning up this mess? Because you guys tore some stuff up at the end of that movie.
Tore some major stuff up. And, I just felt like we just had a couple gut punches come at us all at once. Granted, it's not the same scale, but we had Krypton, cliffhanger ending that we were just getting over, and then we hear this about Spider-Man. I'm like, really? I'm like, can I just have some property just like finish out the story without getting canceled or people getting pissed off over money or whatever the heck it is? Because it just this one was one of those divorces that just seemed. Even Jeff Goldblum this weekend was like perplexed at D23. Like, really, can't we just all figure out? And granted, I still see out there stories that say negotiations are still going on. This could still all get smoothed out and worked out. But on the other hand, I mean, Feige even said it himself. It's like, look, I got 5 movies out of this character, 2 standalone.
Yep.
And they do have the MCU, which, after, we got more details this weekend at D23 about the movie properties, the Disney Plus properties that are going to go forward with the MCU. So, yes, it does. Feige definitely had a good pulse on the character, and I think reinvigorated Spider-Man from what Sony had done with the character. But at the end of the day, Marvel and Disney are like, we have a whole universe over here, and Sony managed to capture lightning in a bottle with Spider-Verse, and I think that's as much about Lord and Miller and the team that they put together to make that movie. Like I said, I did watch Spider-Verse just to help me feel better, but I haven't watched.
Spider-Verse didn't make money though, well. So
yeah.
I mean, it really didn't. And looking at it, it is shocking how little money that movie made. And part of the reason is because it's critically acclaimed, but it is not a blockbuster film.
But ironically, Venom did.
Venom did. No, I totally understand that. But you brought up Into the Spider-Verse, and I'm like, that didn't make money. Venom did. However, you know what? Venom is literally lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Nobody knows why that movie worked. I still haven't even seen it.
I haven't either.
Okay. But I understand a lot of other people did. I think there was something about it though, where I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I wouldn't be shocking if partly why it made money is because of an international appeal. Because that's the same thing that happened with, I think World of Warcraft that movie only make money though overseas when you isolate the two different international versus domestic. So there is something to be said that sometimes these movies do work, but it's not because Americans like them.
Right.
It's this world.
Yeah.
and it's also that Kevin, like I understand Kevin Feige is kind of like walking away from this because it's like one character, boo-hoo. I've done my job. If they don't want to play, they don't want to continue playing. I do think it's very interesting, though, how Sony and Kevin Feige went into this deal knowing how many movies they had agreed to.
Right. Why
the heck would Sony end Far From Home the way they did? Knowing then they're going to do this like, oh, well, we're done here. Let me go capitalize on this character one more time and not have to share any of our profits. When it's kind of like, yeah, but doesn't that hinge on it being connected to this grandiose cinematic universe?
It does. And it'll be interesting to see how they move forward with this story, with the characters. So we did learn this weekend that Tom Holland is still involved. I think he still has 2 films left on his contract. One or 2 films left.
On which contract?
What's to do Spider-Man?
For Sony or for Marvel?
For Marvel.
Really?
I think he still had. I think he was contracted to do the. He is still engaged in the property.
No, I understand that, but I mean, he could just have one more film on his, because I think he signed on for 6 pictures.
Right.
But then that wouldn't be an Avengers film. That would be a Spider-Man Sony.
Yeah, that's Spider-Man 3 Sony. And that's the one I'm talking about. So it is one more film. Yeah. So it's one more film he has to do. I think I did read where that over this weekend he did say they were kicking around ideas for Spider-Man 3 and the potential crossovers with some of the characters that Sony has as far as in their Marvel wheelhouse.
Oh, so you mean they're gonna do another version of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 which featured like way too many of those characters?
Yeah, well, there's still, there's Venom, there's Carnage out there, there's any number of characters that they could pull from, but again, I guess we will see again how much of Spider-Man's story could be carried forward, because that's the other thing too. I think part of it is trying to get the writers and the director from Far From Home and Homecoming to come over to Sony. I think that's some of the other negotiations that's going on right now. So they could bring the team over and maybe retcon it enough that they could maybe reference the MCU and carry forward the story that was left at Far From Home, or they may just go in a completely different route and completely ignore the MCU. But really, I think in recent history, everyone is really tied to Spider-Man because of his relationship with Tony Stark, and so
I think at the end of the day, regardless, people are going to go see this movie. I know that there's going to be headlines like, "Oh, don't see it because it's no longer part of the MCU or anything." It doesn't matter. It's a Spider-Man movie. Exactly. Even the worst, and I think in the Raimi trilogy, Spider-Man 3 actually made the most money out of all of them.
It did. Yeah.
And I think Spider-Man 2 actually made the least.
Yeah.
So really, and knowing all of the drama, people are going to be curious. I think people were curious about Venom.
Yeah.
And that's why they went. And I think people are going to be even more curious about the final Tom Holland Spider-Man, unless something else happens, where he's like, the only way I come back is if the MCU is involved.
Right.
And then Sony gets greedy and is like, you know what? We already capitalized on this. Let's do this again.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but let's talk about those other properties that you were alluding to before, because D23 happened, and what the heck is with Marvel and TV all of a sudden? Like, Jesus, how many series I'm serious. I'm starting to get a little concerned here, because something is to be said with overdoing it and also stretching yourself to a point where the content quality decreases.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that, because they talked about the content issue a little bit today on Collider Live, where is the tipping point for quality? And I know on that show they had referenced for example, concerns about the Eternals could be that film. Or
I'm not worried about that film. You know why? Starks. Okay, they capitalized on two Starks.
They did.
One who made it to the very end, and one who died halfway through.
And
both are kings of the north.
Even my wife was like, whenever she was like, "Hey, Kit," she read some of the Game of Thrones books, never watched any of the show, but she knows enough about the series and stuff to be like, "Hey, Kit Harington's like going to be in the next Marvel movie," and she's not an MCU fan hardly at all. I mean, she's watched a couple of films. So it definitely moved the needle.
I was so happy when I saw that news, because knowing that both of them are going to be, it's like the Stark reunion that we could never get on that show, and we've wanted, because they weren't in any scenes together outside of the pilot. Mm-hmm. And so it's just crazy to me, and I'm like, now they're in a movie. Watch, they have no scenes together.
They probably exactly.
it's like no.
Yeah,
I really am not worried about that movie. I haven't watched that portion of Collider TV Talk yet, or just Collider Live, but I can understand it. However, again, when you get Angelina Jolie, Selma Hayek, these are not names of people who are like, oh, let me do this because it
Right.
would be fun and the script is crap, but
Yeah.
we make money.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
No.
something about it where I think that we're going to be fine, but I am worried about the TV shows.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And I know we talked on a past podcast. I think around maybe it was Endgame or Captain Marvel, where we were discussing having these A-list actors involved with the MCU. It is the place to be now, if you are, for A-list actors. It's not like as much as people like Bill Maher and even the Mark Maron, who's poking fun at the Joker. Even he's in the Joker film and
Mhm.
poking fun at comic book fans. It's now if you're an A-lister, you can do these films and it's not going to harm your career. If anything, it will reinvigorate it if you're hit a rut.
So it is very. So I want to talk about Miss Marvel first.
Yeah,
And
sure.
here's why. Because the other week I was on IMDb and they had an article up. I didn't read the article, but I saw the first image and it was talking about how we're going to meet the mutants. And there was one image on it of Rogue. And suddenly my mind was just like blown because I was like, oh, yeah, part of Rogue's history is that she gets some of her powers from Miss Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And so then to find out that they're doing this series, I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay.
So maybe they will lean into the X-Men through this series because of her ties to Rogue. And we already talked about like the big Comic-Con news and how Doctor Strange in particular, the multiverse, and what happens, and the fact that Scarlet Witch is going to be featured in that movie.
Right.
So I don't know exactly when Miss Marvel comes out.
They haven't given a date yet. It was
Okay.
One of those it was to be. So basically, She-Hulk, Miss Marvel, and Moon Knight were all given to be determined dates as far as release times on Disney Plus. But the other thing about Miss Marvel, which your theory definitely makes, you have definite good support in that with Doctor Strange 2. Feige did say Miss Marvel was going to show up in an MCU film.
Thank you. Like this is what I want because Rogue is my favorite X-Men and she just deserves justice, just like Gambit. Okay, yep. And I want that movie.
Now was the Rogue connection with a previous version of Miss Marvel? Because obviously the Miss Marvel that's going to be in this one version on Disney Plus is going to be Kamala Khan, who's the first Muslim American superhero.
You know what? Let's just act like it was.
And they can retcon it, do it. Yeah, I mean it's. Yeah. I mean,
I don't think it was. I don't think it was. But like you said, and this is what Feige does best. Yeah. He doesn't follow the comics word for word, line by line. He takes them, makes it work for what he's crafting, and it's an interpretation. And I don't think it has to be that exact character because I'm pretty sure it was actually Carol Danvers with the Rogue connection. But throw another version of that character. Use the character to launch another. Like this is why he's the puppet master.
Right.
Or the superhero master. I don't know how we would say that.
He's a superhero master, pulling those strings. Yeah, pulling those strings. But that was the big news for as far as the upcoming Disney Plus shows, and then of course there was the She-Hulk show, which I've seen some stupid stuff out there on Twitter. I mean, it's just stupid fan people like we don't need another woman superhero. What's the I'm like, really? Just step off. 1, 2, and also, I mean, She-Hulk has been around. I even have like some old like copies from back in the day as far as this character, and I mean, she is an established character. She's Bruce Banner's cousin. Due to an emergency blood transfusion, she gets infused with Hulk blood and she's a lawyer, so that's sort of the general things about the character. And then Moon Knight when I heard this news, I was like, whoa, they are like pulling way down in the in the arsenal, sort of like same with the Black Knight character in the Eternals. Um, I mean, Moon Knight's known, I guess, to like a lot of hardcore comic readers. I don't know outside of that how many people in the general populace knows this. But again, I mean, that's the thing about this Disney Plus platform. They can take these kind of chances.
I have heard this name tossed out since probably 2014, Moon Knight. Like, I want Moon Knight. I think if you had asked me this or told me that this was coming in 2014, I would have been able to like, oh, and I know A, B, and C. I don't know A, B, C anymore. What I do know is I saw some immediate fan speculation about casting. And I was like, I like that idea. I don't know if it'll work, but for some reason, Shia LaBeouf came up on Twitter as like perfect casting for this character. I don't know if that's true because I honestly don't know much about it. However, again, when you put those names out there, and it just makes me giddy because I'm like, this is what's so interesting. Like, who cares if it's a man or a girl, the race and ethnicity of these characters? Because we get to see more actors who we love like step into these characters and personify them and bring them to life. And it's just like so much opportunities, and that's what I really like. And like, I understand that people don't like, because I'm also that person who I'm like, well, if we have one version, just replacing them with like the gender opposite of it, it's like, who wants that? Right. You know, all of those people are going to be proven wrong as long as the story works. If the story falls apart, then that's why those people still have voices and still say crummy opinions like that, because they're just like, oh, it didn't work. And it's like, well maybe we should be in the writer's room.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. It's just, I mean, as like, don't get me wrong, as much as I'm concerned about the quality of the content dropping, I do like this path because we do talk about all the time how movies we're watching less and less and TV shows we're getting into more and more. I spent my Saturday binge watching 13 hours of 13 Reasons Why. Wow. I don't know what it is about that show. I every time they drop a season, I binge it in a day and a half. It's like, it's addicting. This season wasn't as good as the previous season, but there was still something there. I'm like, oh, I gotta watch the next episode. Do I need to take a break? No, I just want to get through this.
Well, the thing about Disney Plus, I don't think they're gonna go in that Netflix model of dropping shows all at once. It seems like I think they're gonna be doing these things over time to keep you coming back every week.
Well, that's a relief because I like to also take my time with the shows. They seem to allow me to better digest them. However, 13 Reasons Why this year I figured out real quickly. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss on anything. So tell me, what did we learn about the previously dropped MCU shows such as What If, WandaVision, Loki, Falcon, and Winter Soldier? You don't have to go through all of them.
No, I'll just hit some of the highlights for some of them. So, and also getting to our earlier comment about being concerned about oversaturation and quality of show. It wasn't until really today that I realized I had a chance to get some more details about the WandaVision show. So it looks like the poster, I guess it was described as, I kept hearing these Dick Van Dyke references thrown around, and I know there was some earlier statements back thinking around Comic-Con about it being set in the 50s or whatever. And so it seems that this show is going to be part comedy, sitcom, part MCU like vibe, and so I'm starting to get a little worried about this thing because it's just, I don't know. I mean, I saw the poster, and it has Vision and Scarlet Witch sitting on the couch, and there's some shadows in the background of I think they're superhero selves. But the thing that gets me, I'm just, I don't know if it's going to be a laugh. I mean, I know they won't have like a laugh track and all that kind of nonsense, but the way it's being described, I'm sort of sitting back now and just kind of holding my breath to see what we get on that particular show on Disney Plus. As far as, and I think it's going to be, I think timeline now is around spring of 2021. The What If rollout, they had some pretty awesome posters that they showed, and had a situation like with one of the what ifs was what if Peggy Carter became Captain Britain, and she was instead of Steve Rogers getting the powers, she ended up with it. So that was some of the ones. And then also they had I think Iron Man was actually piloted by Steve Rogers. So that was some of the funky things they did with What If. And then the other thing about WandaVision is Kat Dennings is coming back as Darcy, and Jimmy Woo is going to be his character from the FBI agent from
Ant-Man.
Yeah, so he's back. So Randall Park is back doing that. Falcon and Winter Soldier got some more news there.
Cool poster. Very cool poster.
Yeah, I really like that poster. I meant to I saw that. Winter Soldier, I guess Emily Van Camp's character will be back from Civil War, and not Civil War, from a Winter Soldier. And of course, we also had earlier heard about Daniel Bruhl returning as Zemo. So
Zemo.
Yeah. So the Baron is back. So those are some of the other details that we got from D23 as far as those shows, and then of course just general Disney news. I guess there's Lady and the Tramp live action.
Such a weird trailer to watch.
Yeah.
Because the whole time you're just like, are their lips moving? They're saying things, and then they start to, and then you're like, really? And then, I don't know how I would handle watching that, like the 5-year-old version of me watching that. I would be like, mom.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and then I did see that image of Emma Stone as Cruella.
Mm-hmm.
I have no interest in this movie. Very cool photo.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It just looks like something from a magazine though, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool, avant-garde.
Yeah.
Does not like scream, this is going to be a classic movie.
Yeah.
More importantly, Black Panther 2, they announced, is going to get released May 6th, 2022.
Mm-hmm. Damn,
Thank God.
Yeah. But I feel so far away.
It does, but it's going to be here before you know it, because there's all of this other content that is just going to start dropping, and then you're going to be like, oh, it's already May 6th, 2022. How did we get here?
Exactly. But but basically D23 was just a big commercial for the Disney Plus platform, and then also just sort of filling in the gaps from Comic-Con.
All right. Now, the other half of D23, of course, Star Wars, because that's what Disney is this right now. Either it's Star Wars news or is it MCU. These are like the mother loads, and it started off with the trailer drop for The Mandalorian. Here's what we know. Looks cool. Looks epic. Sound design, very sweet. Mm-hmm. The images, the stills, Jesus Christ. This is like Rogue One quality. This is genius. It's Wild Wild West in space. Mm-hmm. Nostalgia's there. Not a lot of CGI, thank God.
No. Yeah, a lot of I mean, that's I think Jon Favreau definitely strikes me as a type of showrunner and director who is going to want practical effects over CGI effects. And
Yeah.
I think I think I read a Deadline article where he did talk about that.
Well, he's a classic Star Wars fan. Of
Yeah.
course, he's like, that's why these movies work. And when you do think like, oh, let's bring in first 21st century technology, suddenly it just gets corrupted and it's not recapturing what was. Here's what we don't know, Will.
Mhm.
Will the Mandalorian ever say something?
Maybe in season 2, since they've already been confirmed for season 2.
It's and I get it, and it's a very cool trick that they're doing right
Yeah.
now. And in all honesty, pretty much maybe one or two people in either of these trailers have really said anything.
Right.
But it's just like nobody's talking, and it's kind of like, is this a silent TV show? If so, that's a risk, and I'm very curious to see if it'll pay off. Maybe that's why they're spending so much money on the set designs. I don't know.
Nah, it's gonna be like, I think it's gonna be like the Clint Eastwood character from back in the day, the Man with No Name.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's hitting all those like notes, and I mean, and it obviously has been described as a Wild Wild West space adventure. So I think we'll get that vibe, but it'll be placed in the Star Wars universe. I guess it's said about a few years after Return of the Jedi. So,
well, I mean, yeah, that's what it looks like too, and that's what it feels like, and it feels authentic. And I think it even works a little bit more right now because of Rogue One and how Rogue One was able to tell a story from the past in 2015, and we're just like, or 2016, I think Rogue One came out on. Yeah. But it just felt like it recaptured that spirit, and really it's just there. It's serious. There's something about it where I don't feel like they thought, okay, so we have the streaming app and we need to sell it. How do we do that? Well, let's give them Star Wars because they buy tickets. And instead it feels like, no, we have the story to tell. We know how we want to tell it. Yeah. We're going to sell it because it's Star Wars. So we know people are going to watch it. But how do we get other people, like those people who probably had seen the trilogy maybe once, maybe twice? How do we get them and their kids to watch it? And what they did in this trailer, like that opening shot with the stormtroopers' heads.
Oh yeah.
That was so cool.
It was.
And I love some of the comparisons. Like you either get Wild Wild West or Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. And it's just this mixture of it, which is exactly why I think Game of Thrones worked, because it felt very past and medieval, yet at the same time it was fantasy and it was in this other world and not connected to but there was something, so it feels like it's bounded in realism as much as that it's a science fiction fantasy genre show.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. It does have that groundedness, and just the way they introduced the characters in the trailer. And I mean, we saw like Carl Weathers. So again, speaking to your point about trying to pull in other people and other who are not necessarily diehard Star Wars fans, but when they see they see Carl Weathers or Giancarlo Esposito, they'll be like, oh, well, hey, we got Apollo Creed in this. Mm-hmm. Hey, I might check this out. And of course, there are the familiar things from Star Wars. I mean, we have IG Droid, who was again another bounty hunter that we saw in Empire Strikes Back. So, so there's those kind of elements that will draw in the Star Wars fans. So, the more I watched the trailer and really starting that Friday morning when the poster came out and I saw the official poster for the first time, I was like, oh, this is going to be good. And then I wasn't let down by the trailer.
Yeah, no, the trailer is genius. I think this is how you do a teaser trailer, and for all intents and purposes, this is how you just do a trailer.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I honestly, as much as I was joking before about will he speak,
Hmm.
that is such a clever way to get my interest, make me feel like I'm going to sit down and watch this pilot episode. I have no idea
Yeah.
really what's going to be happening in it
Yep.
or the story, but I
Yep.
really want to know if he's going to speak. So I'm going
Yeah.
to watch it.
Yeah. And the way they have set the trailer up, I mean, it not having to speak, just the visuals, it's a perfect tease to like to draw you in, and
Mhm.
they're not giving away anything other than just okay, just setting up the world that we're in, and set up the familiar things. You see the stormtroopers, so you're like, okay, I know Star Wars. I see a spaceship going across, and you know, you see those familiar elements, but beyond that, and you have just a few lines of dialogue as far as bounty hunters and that kind of stuff, and it's just like, oh, like you said earlier, this is a good mashup of Game of Thrones, Wild Wild West, and I mean, and if you're going to launch your streaming service on it with a potential tentpole property and show, this I think Disney made the correct decision here by using this vehicle from a Star Wars vehicle to do that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like anybody else tried to do a similar thing. They just chose the wrong team. Some would
Yeah,
argue. You should have chose Doom Patrol, but whatever.
yeah,
So on top of that, after we get really excited about Mandalorian,
mhm,
I don't Kenobi drops.
yep,
Like, and even though we knew it
hmm,
because it leaked or it came out, it's still really cool because
yeah,
and I like it. I like how it's kind of like let's draw you in
hmm,
and then let's remind you that this is the first of probably many.
yeah,
So don't think like it's Mandalorian and then you can turn it off, much like a lot of us do whenever Cobra Kai comes off. We're like,
exactly,
don't need YouTube Red anymore.
yep,
It's really it. No, no,
yep,
no, no. Stay tuned because there's more. Granted, you have a shit ton of MCU stuff to keep you occupied when you're not watching Star Wars.
yeah,
But the Kenobi, and that's again a reminder, an actor,
Gregor,
Ewan McGregor,
yep,
comes back and to reprise his role and to tell a story that a lot of diehard fans have been waiting for.
yes, yes.
It's just it's great. I love it.
I love it too. I love it too. I mean, it was it was leaked earlier, and of course we were all like, "Well, is this going to be another one of those like Batman things where is he or isn't he?" But as Ewan said at D23, it's so great I could talk about this now. So and I'm so happy that he is officially on board. They've got scripts written. I think their plan is to start filming first of the next year, and so it's very possible we could have uh, Kenobi end of 2020, beginning of 2021. So it's literally right around the corner. And I love that. I know they put out the timeline for this show, and I think it's in between uh, Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. So we'll get those lost years.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, and that's the story that everybody has been saying
yeah,
they need to tell
yeah,
because there is a lot of interest and I think yeah.
yeah, and McGregor is the right age for it too. I mean, it's not like they're going to have to do. I mean, if it, chronologically, this is where Obi-Wan. We were left last time we saw Obi-Wan is he was watching over Luke on Tatooine. Leia went off to Alderaan, and yeah, and Yoda had that line where he's like, "Quite, I have while you are in your exile, I have tasks for you," and one your mentor, Qui-Gon, has come back from the Force, So there's so many things there, and the one thing that I did like about the prequels, I know people hate, for the most part, the prequels are meh at best for most folks, but the one thing that really stuck with me from the prequels that I'm so glad they're following up with this Kenobi show is learning more about Ben Kenobi, and not only those lost years that he was watching over Luke on Tatooine, but also hopefully we'll get an opportunity to learn more about Kenobi in his younger days and as when he was a Padawan, and maybe they'll have some flashbacks with that. And the other thing too is, if I recall, I don't know if this is rumor or has been confirmed, but I think we'll see Darth Maul in this series too.
I heard more speculation we would end up seeing Darth Vader.
Yeah, well, we'll probably see Vader. Yeah, because you'll have to see Vader because there's a line in A New Hope that he's like, a presence I haven't felt since. There'll be opportunities there for Vader to show up. Just got to get James Earl Jones's voice now.
Yeah, now while you can.
Yeah.
So, in the final bit of Star Wars news was the sizzle reel for Episode 9 and mini trailer. Pretty much a trailer, guys. I don't care what you say. Despite the introduction, by the end of it, you were pumped to go see Episode 9 as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. Great trailer, great visuals, some really cool frames. Just I've been seeing some gifs on my timeline leading up to our recording tonight, and I'm like, yeah, this is why I'm interested, because again, it's serious and it just feels real, and it's so fascinating what they're doing. And the big part of it is what's going on with Rey. What's going on with Rey, which is interesting because as much as I'm debating that question, you know what other question keeps coming up in my mind? Why do they call it the Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah.
Because don't forget that, like, despite this trailer, yes, it's Rey-centric, but why then call it Rise of Skywalker? Now, I did listen today to the last bit of Collider Live. If you haven't or you don't know, please go check it out. We're big fans of them, obviously. We tend to watch and better understand a lot of what we're talking about when we record. And I don't always agree with them, but sometimes I do. And Christian Harloff, I do have to say, he made one really good point that I actually understood about why Rey being a clone makes sense, and it's specifically in regards to The Last Jedi. When she goes into the cave and to see who her parents are, but she doesn't see who her parents are. Instead, she sees her reflection and then all of these different Reys, alluding to she's a clone. That makes perfect sense.
It does.
Does it also make me want to hurt the writers? Yes, because it's a cop-out.
Yes. I even tweeted today. I have posed the question on our feed. I've been getting a lot of good responses from folks as far as some theories. As far as I've seen cloned, I've seen someone say it's Kerry Russell's character. There's been the prevailing things. I don't
understand the Kerry Russell character. It's Rey.
Yeah, it's Rey. It is Rey. And there's also been the Vision, and so one thing as far as visions, I've seen it go different ways. Folks, is Rey's just having a vision herself, but they talked about that some on Collider too, as far as that'll be that's another cop out.
And I would take clone over dream sequence or vision. Yeah. I would, because if you have to do either or, again, because of that point that Christian made about The Last Jedi, I'm like, yes, it makes sense then.
Yeah,
a vision would be worse because it's a vision and it kind of feels like you were cheated.
Yeah, I like twisted the vision thing into it was a vision of actually Kylo instead of instead of Rey's vision of being a Sith Lord, it was Kylo's vision of her being a Sith Lord. But I mean, that to me, the only way for me at least, that would be the only reason why he would do the vision thing.
Which, and then brings me back to my original second question. Why, again, we have to remind ourselves this is about the rise of Skywalker. So anything, it may seem very race-centric, but for all intents and purposes, she's not necessarily a Skywalker.
Right.
So she may have Skywalker genealogy. Who knows what she has in her. Well, but at the same time, like what you were saying, if he sees that vision, that's one way he gets brought back to the light. And everybody... it's not confirmed, but I feel like everybody going in this movie, it's like, this is the redemption of Kylo Ren. Mm-hmm. So the only way to redeem him is for him to save Rey. Rey first has to fall for her to get caught, I guess. Right.
Yeah. That would be the only, and that goes to my thought as far as the him having the vision and coming around and bringing her back from being a Sith. But I like
after some grueling fight sequences.
Oh, the grueling fight I love the poster, especially when it first came out, and them on the fighting on what looks like the remnants of the Death Star, and it's just everything about this episode 9. I was kind of not sure about it. I mean, as far as how excited I was, but the sizzle reel definitely it was just beautifully done, just bringing us, having Luke voiceover with all the generations and pulling it all together for this final conclusion and the conclusion of the Star Wars and the Skywalker saga. I'm definitely looking forward to it. Love to hear more people's theories and stuff. Some of us will probably get it right on the edges, but the one other thing about the clone thing that I know they were discussing on Collider and some other place that I haven't seen it other places, but I guess explaining some of the things as it relates to Rey, as far as having DNA from all the great warriors and stuff, and does that weaken her as a character? And because it's sort of like, again, another cop out, and I can see that point. And we talked about this with Krypton with
Nyssa.
Not with Nyssa, and also what we had this season at the cop out with Lyta and her clone, when they had we thought that she was murdered by Jack Zul, and then we found out that it's a clone, and it really did in a lot of ways undercut that suspense that they had. And
for you
yeah for me, yeah, but I like stakes, so I'm hoping that Rey's not a clone. I'm hoping if it would be great if she just really just flat out goes dark side, and it does become a redemption story for Kylo. Obviously, that is another dramatic cop out as well.
Well, here's the thing, because again, part of the reason why I was fine with what they did on Krypton, because I thought it was a great trick. As long as they don't do it again, I was going to be fine. And then they got canceled, so they won't. No, too soon. With this whole theory about Rey being a clone, I remember talking with other people after Force Awakens, because everybody was curious, where does she come from? Who are her parents? And the coolest theories had her having her genealogy date back to the Sith, to Palpatine. And then you were just like, oh, so you have the person who is descendant of good fall to the dark side, cross paths with the person who's a descendant from bad, who's in the good side, cross paths. So it's like this reversal that they have, this yin and yang. A very cool concept. You can still do that with this clone theory, because she is literally a byproduct of the Empire. She is their creation. She is one of many now, And
Right.
some people don't like that. It's kind of
Right.
like defeats the uniqueness. However, we don't know what happened to the other clones, right?
Right.
So we
Right.
don't know if she's also unique because she's the only one to turn to the good side, and we don't know why.
Right.
And she's clearly drawn to Kylo, and Kylo's drawn to her for some reason. So there is this, you can still do this weird yin and yang, and she can still be unique. It's all about how they tell the story to make it work.
True.
Because, you could also say, like, oh, well, he's the prince who then saves the girl who has to bite an apple to fall asleep, and he's the only one who can wake her up. Like, if you do the whole fall to the dark side thing. So people are always going to nitpick.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to have a reason to say, like, oh, you diluted the story. So just tell the story. This is all speculation right now. We don't know what's going to happen.
It is. And it is all a speculation, and we'll find out in December if she's a clone, or it was just a vision, or if it was something else.
Okay, so I told you had 2 minutes for Pennyworth.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you only have a minute and a half. Will, I'm serious. This show, I don't think I can do. I don't think I can do it anymore.
Yeah, it's an acquired taste.
I'm reading your notes about the 6th episode, and I'm like, no, I don't want to watch Martha babysit Thomas Wayne's sister, encounter Satan, and then end up naked in a field. I don't think I want to watch that.
Yeah, this I was on board with this series up until this episode, and then I was like, okay, it was the first episode I actually managed to make it through without, kept me engaged. Yeah, falling asleep. Yeah, but it was it's one of those things where I was on board with them until they started getting all mystical and stuff. Because at least it was pretty grounded. I mean, it was very. Again, I love this. The things I talked about last week. It was really into the spycraft and really into that, and we got some of that in this episode with Thomas Wayne. It was confirmed that he is a company man, works at the CIA, and there were elements of it that worked like that. But then with Martha having to babysit Patricia Wayne, and they end up in this hedonistic party, and Martha throws back a bunch of drinks, and I think she gets, obviously they were laced with something, and she ends up in the field, and Alfred is off doing his work for Jack, for Mr. Ripper, and so I'll probably, just for completeness sake, finish it out.
You poor soul.
But
you may walk away from it and never return.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things like, okay, September 6th is rolling around for Titans. A couple other things are starting to roll back. So, yeah, it was a good filler. It was a good filler for the summer, but
sometimes shows don't work. I mean, in all honesty, or they don't work for us, or they don't.
I mean, it was working for me. I was into it. This episode just kind of took me out of it.
You had your time, sir. Yeah. No, this show is not good. It's just not there. I feel like it is. It's trying to be Gotham, and honestly, because Gotham lasted for 5 seasons, it clearly worked for some people. Yeah. It did not work for me, even though I kept going in and out of it. At the same time, it wanted to be taken serious in the worst way, because it wanted to combine that genre element of Gotham with basically Billions and Succession, which are HBO and Showtime shows, and it was just this weird hybrid, and honestly, boring in my opinion. The 5th episode, when I tell you, Will, I understood probably 25% of it, that's pretty accurate because I literally had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. I mean,
I don't follow this. I don't care about it. When you talk
yeah,
about stakes, I didn't really understand the stake of a situation, and it tells you something when something as bad as them killing off the female protagonist in the third episode. And then in the next episode, which is clearly about grief, you have no sympathy for the hero. That tells you you're not invested in a TV show.
yeah, that's fair. Fair point. And then the hero goes and shags the barkeep barista in the 5th episode. So
See, I didn't even know that happened.
yeah, yeah, it was at the very end. It was at the very end after he blew the head off of the No Name League head. So yeah, I mean, again, like I said, there are elements of the show that are interesting. It really wasn't until episode 5 that I finally started to realize the factions with the No Name League and the Raven Society and some of the inner workings there. But it does meander along. I will fully grant you that. And as I said, I'll watch it every now and then, but it's not like it wasn't like Krypton and other shows, Cloak and Dagger, which excuse me, D23. I was hopeful that you would tell us something, but that's another day. As far as whether or not they got renewed, but yeah, this show doesn't do that. It's not like appointment TV for me.
Yeah, so let's not meander anymore on Pennyworth and let's get out of here for tonight. Yep. Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Will M. Polk. That's WILLMPOLK.
And you can find me at Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.